Hi, I'm James Lamont, fellow at the Bedeen Center for Rural Economic Development at the University of Minnesota Crookston. Today, we're going to talk about impacts of hurricanes on agriculture. 2024 was a remarkable year because we were supposed to have twice as many storms than what were predicted. However, the storms that did hit the United States were very impactful, packed a lot of danger, and major economic impacts to the United States, especially the Southeast. In the aggregate, hurricanes are frequent in the United States. Pretty much every year, someone on the Gulf Coast, the Atlantic coast, or even our territories in the Caribbean are hit by some tropical system. However, every once in a while, we have a major system, which is categorized as 3 or above in the Saffir-Simpson scale. In effect, we've had two basically hit Florida this year, the Gulf Coast, and then one, Hurricane Helen, actually worked its way through Georgia and the Carolinas and pretty much flooded areas that had never been impacted by hurricanes. Consider the pictures we saw roughly a month ago out of Asheville, North Carolina, where they received over a foot of rain and basically the water flooded the city for an entire week. This had major impact, not just on the regional economy, but all of the agriculture surrounding it. Hurricanes naturally cause a lot of damage in the United States and Mexico. And the reason why I bring up Mexico is we import a lot of our produce from Mexico, especially the eastern part of the country. Regions like Nogales, Arizona, which are far from either the Pacific or the Atlantic or really the Gulf Coast, serve as critical hubs for importation and exportation to some degree when U.S. crops are hit. This is where Mexican producers can basically augment what was lost in the United States or vice versa, using a port away from the Pacific and or Gulf coasts. As you can imagine, crop shortages and infrastructure destruction create long-term disruptions on food supply chains across borders, as well as across state borders in the United States. And hurricanes like Idalia, for example, caused over $500 million alone in damages just to Florida's agricultural sector. We still don't know what Helen and other storms this year produced. Those are still being accounted for. Augmenting the impacts on hurricanes in the southeastern United States are droughts and what's happening in Mexico and their impact on food supply systems. So as you can imagine, couple that with inflationary pressures that we've already seen through a number of other externalities. And this is why we're seeing major price hikes on certain types of produce. As you can imagine, states like Florida are definitely relying more, especially after this year having been hit by two major storms, on Mexican produce. Food prices continue to rise due to reduced supply and an increased demand for imported goods. And recovery efforts are focusing on minimizing disruptions for both countries, since we are basically interchangeable as it turns out with respect to certain produce. This is really important from a long-term perspective, given climate change, its impact on both countries, its impact on many of the major production centers. Fortunately, we don't see nearly as many issues in California as it pertains to systems like this. However, drought naturally has been a major concern there as well over the last decade or two. Thank you for joining me. We'll see you next time.